Okay, so you know how much we all love to just dive deep into a topic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We've got a really cool one today. It's a discussion between a grad student and their professor.
Sounds like a familiar situation for me, at least.
Uh-huh, yeah, probably for you more than for me. But this is about Shakespeare's Macbeth.
Oh, Macbeth. A classic.
It is, and this discussion, it's really interesting. It goes through the whole play act by act and even scene by scene.
Oh, wow, so they really break it down.
They do, and they're not just like summarizing,
Yeah.
they're analyzing it and having a real back and forth about it.
I see. So it's like we're getting a glimpse into a real classroom discussion.
Exactly. So their names are Axay the student and Dr. Jasvant Rathod is the professor. And the paper we're looking at is like 6 pages long.
All right, so good amount of material to cover.
Yeah, so for everyone listening, our mission today is to kind of pull out the core stuff from this conversation. What are the big events that happen in Macbeth? What are the motivations behind the characters' actions? And what are some of the key insights that Axay and Dr. Rathod bring up?
Okay, I'm ready to dive in.
Awesome. Let's start with Act 1, shall we?
Let's do it.
So Act 1 is really where they see Macbeth's ambition kind of starting to spark. Like the little embers starting to glow.
Right, setting the stage for all the drama to come.
Exactly. So Scene 1 opens with this really dramatic setting. We're on this like stormy heath, and there are these 3 witches just hanging out.
Spooky.
Right, and they're already plotting. They're like, when shall we 3 meet again? When the battle's lost and won.
Oh, so they're connected to this battle that's happening.
They are, and they clearly have some bad intentions for Macbeth. They're going to cause some trouble.
All right, so some foreshadowing right from the start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in Scene 2, we shift to the war camp. King Duncan is there, getting updates on the battle.
Okay, so we're getting the other side of what the witches were talking about.
Right, and there's this really vivid description from this bloody captain. He's talking about how Macbeth and Banquo were just like savage warriors.
Oh, wow, so they're like the heroes of this battle.
Totally. The captain actually uses some pretty intense language to describe Macbeth. He calls him a beast and a war god.
Oh, wow. So right away we're getting this sense of Macbeth's fierce nature.
Definitely. And King Duncan is so impressed that he decides to make Macbeth the new Thane of Cawdor. The previous Thane betrayed him, so Macbeth is basically getting a promotion.
Makes sense, rewarding the hero.
Exactly. So now in Scene 3, we're back with the witches on that creepy heath.
Right, back to the spooky stuff.
Yeah, and they're not just waiting around, they're doing some more mischief, like putting a curse on a sailor just for kicks.
Okay, so definitely not your friendly neighborhood witches.
Not at all. Now this is where things get really interesting. Macbeth and Banquo happen to be passing by on their way back from the battle.
Oh, this must be the meeting the witches were talking about.
Yep. And the witches just lay these prophecies on Macbeth. They tell him he's Thane of Glamis, which he already is. He's going to be Thane of Cawdor, which he doesn't know about yet. And then, boom, he's going to be king.
Wow, that's a lot to take in all at once.
Right. And Banquo's like, hey, what about me? So they tell him that his sons will be kings.
Interesting. So they're planting seeds of ambition in both of them, but in different ways.
Exactly. And Axay points out how Macbeth's reaction is just pure shock. He's like, wait, what? Especially because right after that, some messengers show up and tell him about being made the new Thane of Cawdor.
So one of the prophecies has already come true.
Exactly. So now he's starting to think maybe the king thing isn't so far-fetched.
Yeah, I can see how that would be tempting.
And that's where his internal struggle begins. Is this going to just happen, or do I need to, make it happen?
The classic question of fate versus free will.
Right. And it's interesting because Banquo is way more cautious. He warns Macbeth about the witches, hey, maybe they're trying to trick us. Maybe they're not so trustworthy. He actually says something like, oftentimes, to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, to betrays in deepest consequence.
That's a pretty insightful warning.
Yeah, Banquo is definitely the voice of reason here. But of course, ambition can be a powerful drug. So Scene 4 takes us to Duncan's palace, and Macbeth is getting all this praise and gratitude from the king.
Yeah, he's the war hero of the hour.
Totally. But then Duncan makes this announcement that throws a wrench in Macbeth's plans. He declares his son Malcolm as the Prince of Cumberland, basically saying he's the heir to the throne.
Oh, so now Macbeth has a direct obstacle in his path.
Exactly. And Axay points out that this is when Macbeth really starts to see Malcolm as a problem.
Okay, so the seeds of ambition are definitely starting to sprout now.
For sure. Now, scene 5 introduces us to Lady Macbeth, and let me tell you, she is a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, I've heard she's quite the character.
She is. So we first meet her through a letter that Macbeth has sent her, telling her about the witch's prophecies.
Okay, so she's in the loop from the start.
And her reaction is immediate and strong. Dr. Rathod really emphasizes this in their discussion. Lady Macbeth is like, King, we're doing this.
Wow, so she's even more ambitious than he is.
It seems that way. And when Macbeth gets home, she wastes no time, you know? She starts working on him, trying to convince him that they need to kill Duncan.
So she's the driving force behind the plan.
Very much so. Duncan is coming to visit that night, and she sees it as the perfect opportunity.
I bet Macbeth is having some second thoughts, though.
Oh, he is. And that's when Lady Macbeth really lays into him. You know, she questions his courage and his manhood.
Oh, that's gotta sting.
It does. And she's not playing around. She even says something like, I would have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out had I so sworn as you have done to this.
Oh, wow, that's a pretty intense image.
Yeah, she's basically saying she would do anything to keep a promise, even something that horrible.
So she's trying to show him how serious she is about this.
Exactly. And it works. By the end of Act 1, Macbeth is on board with the plan to kill Duncan.
Wow, so Act 1 really lays the groundwork for everything that's to come.
It does. It shows us how the witch's prophecies plant this seed of ambition in Macbeth, and how Lady Macbeth waters that seed and helps it grow into this like full-blown desire for power.
And like you said, it raises that question of fate versus free will.
Right. Is this all just destiny playing out, or is Macbeth making his own choices?
It's a question that keeps coming up throughout the play.
Definitely. So now let's move on to Act 2, which Axay and Dr. Rathod call The Deed and Its Fallout. What do you think?
Sounds ominous. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Act 2 opens with this scene where Banquo and Macbeth are talking late at night at Macbeth's castle.
Okay, so right after they've made the decision to kill Duncan.
Right, and Banquo's feeling uneasy. He tells Macbeth he's been having dreams about the witches.
Oh, interesting. So he's still suspicious of them.
Yeah, he's like, hey, maybe we should be careful about these weird sisters. But Macbeth lies and says he hasn't even thought about them.
So he's already being deceptive.
He is. Then we get this really creepy moment where Macbeth starts hallucinating. He sees a dagger floating in the air pointing him towards Duncan's room.
Oh, wow. That's unsettling.
It is. And then a bell rings. It's Lady Macbeth's signal that everything's ready.
So it's go time.
Yep. And then in scene 2, we see Macbeth right after the murder. He's come back with bloody hands, and he's clearly freaking out. He keeps saying, Macbeth shall sleep no more.
Oh, wow. So he's immediately consumed by guilt.
Totally. But Lady Macbeth is super composed. She's like, okay, wash your hands, let's frame the guards, and we're good.
What a contrast.
Right. And this is something that Axay and Dr. Rathod talk about, how their reactions are so different. Macbeth is just overwhelmed by what he's done. He feels cursed.
And Lady Macbeth is all about practicality at this point.
Exactly. But we'll see how that changes later.
Okay, so what happens next?
Well, scene 3 is all about the discovery of Duncan's murder.
Oh boy, here we go.
Macduff is the one who finds him. And Macbeth pretends to be all shocked and angry, and in this like fake fit of rage, he kills the guards.
Smart move, eliminating the witnesses.
Right. And in all the commotion, Lady Macbeth faints.
Convenient time.
Definitely Axay and Dr. Rathod actually wonder if she's really fainting or just putting on a show.
That's a good question. It's hard to tell with her.
Yeah, she's always got something up her sleeve. Meanwhile, Duncan's sons, Malcolm and Donald Bane, realize that they could be next, and they decide to run away.
Smart move again. Things are not looking good for them there.
No, they're definitely in danger. And their escape actually plays right into Macbeth's hands because it makes them look guilty.
Oh, so it deflects suspicion away from Macbeth.
Exactly. Then in scene 4, we get this sense that the murder has kind of thrown the natural world out of whack.
Okay, interesting. How so?
There's this old man and Ross, and they're talking about how it's been dark all day, even though it should be light.
Yeah.
And there was an owl that killed a falcon, which is like totally unnatural.
So it's like nature itself is reacting to this horrible act.
Exactly. And Macduff is getting more and more suspicious of Macbeth. He decides he's not going to Macbeth's coronation.
Yeah, I can see why he'd want to distance himself.
So by the end of Act 2, the deed is done. Macbeth is technically king, but there are already cracks showing. You know, people are suspicious, and Macbeth is clearly not okay mentally.
Right, that guilt is eating away at him.
It is. And Axay points out how the supernatural elements are becoming more prominent. You know, like the dagger hallucination and the weird things happening in nature.
Yeah, it's like the supernatural is reflecting the turmoil in Macbeth's mind.
Totally. So now we move on to Act 3, which they call Power's Price.
Ooh, I like that title.
Right, because it really shows that even though Macbeth has achieved his goal of becoming king, it comes at a huge cost.
Okay, so let's see what price he has to pay.
Well, scene 1 opens in Macbeth's castle, and Banquo is straight up suspicious now.
Yeah, I mean, after all that's happened, it'd be hard not to be.
He's thinking about the witches' prophecies and how they all came true for Macbeth, and he's like, I wonder.
Yeah, he's putting the pieces together.
He is. And on top of that, Macbeth is just a mess. He's totally paranoid, and his biggest fear now is that other prophecy, the one about Banquo's sons becoming kings.
So he's worried about his legacy.
Totally. He sees Banquo and his family as a threat to his own power.
I can see how that would make him even more paranoid.
And it leads him to make another terrible decision. He hires these 2 murderers to kill Banquo and his son Fleance.
Oh no, not again.
I know. It's a dark echo of what happened to Duncan. It shows how far Macbeth has fallen, you know. He's willing to betray his friend to protect his own position.
Power really corrupts.
It does. Then in scene 2, we get this really confusing conversation between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth.
Confusing how?
Well, he kind of hints at his plans, but he doesn't tell her everything.
Oh, so he's keeping secrets from her now.
Yeah, and she's like, hey, why are you still so stressed? We got what we wanted. But Macbeth confesses that he's super tormented, and he's specifically afraid of Banquo's noble nature.
That's interesting. It's like he admires Banquo even as he's plotting to kill him.
Yeah, it's a complex mix of emotions. Then we get to scene 3, which is the attack on Banquo.
Okay, so does it go according to plan?
Well, Banquo is killed, but Fleance escapes.
Oh, so Macbeth's plan backfires a little.
It does. And this is going to come back to haunt him big time.
I can see that coming.
Then comes one of the most famous scenes in the play, the banquet scene.
The one with the ghost, right?
The one and only. So Macbeth is trying to act all kingly, you know, throwing this big feast.
Trying to project an image of power.
Exactly. But then the murderer shows up and tells him about Banquo's death and Fleance's escape.
Oh, that's not what he wanted to hear.
Nope. And then things go from bad to worse. Banquo's ghost appears, but only Macbeth can see it.
Spooky.
Right. And the ghost is sitting right in Macbeth's chair.
Oh, no.
Macbeth completely loses it. He starts yelling at the ghost, demanding that it leave.
I bet the guests are a little confused.
Oh, they are totally freaked out. Lady Macbeth tries to cover for him, saying that he's just having a little episode, something he's prone to.
Smooth.
But Macbeth just keeps ranting about the ghost.
So his guilt is manifesting in this very public way.
Exactly. And Axay points out how the ghost is this really powerful symbol of Macbeth's conscience. You know, it's like his guilt has taken on a physical form.
That's a really interesting interpretation.
Yeah, it adds a whole other layer to the scene.
So what happens after the whole ghost debacle?
Well, scene 5 takes us back to the witches. They're having a meeting with Hecate, their boss lady.
Okay, so the witches have a hierarchy.
They do, and Hecate is not happy. She's like, hey, who told you to mess with Macbeth without my permission?
Oh, so they went rogue.
They did, and now Hecate's got her own plan. She wants to mess with Macbeth even more, give him a false sense of security.
So they're deliberately leading him down a dangerous path.
Exactly. Then in scene 6, we see some of the noblemen talking, and it's clear that they're starting to suspect Macbeth.
So the walls are closing in.
They are. Lennox is one of the noblemen, and he's pretty much convinced that Macbeth is behind all the murders. And Macduff has gone to England to try to get help to overthrow Macbeth.
So the rebellion is brewing.
It is. So by the end of Act 3, Macbeth is king, but he's completely isolated and paranoid. He's lost his friend, he's haunted by guilt, and people are turning against him.
It's like all the consequences of his actions are catching up to him.
Exactly. And Act 4 is where we see him really try to cling to any shred of hope he can find.
Which Axay and Dr. Rathod call false security, right?
Right, because he's getting these prophecies that seem to guarantee his safety, but they're ultimately misleading.
Okay, so tell me about these prophecies.
Well, scene 1 opens with Macbeth going back to the witches. He's desperate for reassurance.
Yeah, he needs something to hold on to.
And the witches deliver, but in a very cryptic way. They conjure up these 3 apparitions.
Oh, wow. So it's getting even more supernatural now.
Definitely. The first apparition is this armed head, and it warns Macbeth to beware Macduff.
Okay, so that's pretty straightforward.
It is. But then the second apparition is this bloody child, and it tells Macbeth that none of woman born shall harm Macbeth.
Wait, what does that even mean?
Right, it's super vague, and Macbeth takes it to mean that he's basically invincible.
Ah, so he's misinterpreting the prophecy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then the third apparition is this crowned child holding a tree, and it says that Macbeth shall never vanquished be until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him.
Okay, that sounds even more impossible. How could a forest move?
Right. So Macbeth is feeling pretty confident at this point. He's like, okay, Macduff's a problem, but no one born of a woman can hurt me, and a forest can't move, so I'm basically good.
Oh, he's in for a rude awakening.
He is. But the witches aren't done yet. They show him this vision of Banquo's ghost, followed by a whole line of kings who are all Banquo's descendants.
So they're reminding him that his line won't last.
Exactly. And this just fuels Macbeth's rage and paranoia. He decides to go after Macduff's family.
Oh, no, that's not good.
It's not. In scene 2, we see the horrible consequences of Macbeth's decision. Lady Macduff and her children are brutally murdered.
That's awful.
It is, and it really shows how far Macbeth has fallen.
Yeah.
He's gone from this brave warrior to this tyrannical child killer.
It's a tragic downfall.
It is. Then scene 3 takes us to England, where Macduff is meeting with Malcolm.
Okay, so they're planning the rebellion.
They are. But first, Malcolm wants to make sure he can trust Macduff, so he pretends to be even worse than Macbeth. Like saying he'd be a terrible king.
Oh, so he's testing Macduff's loyalty?
Exactly.
Mm.
And Macduff passes the test. He's truly heartbroken over the state of Scotland.
I can only imagine how he feels.
And then Ross arrives with the news about Macduff's family.
Oh, no.
Macduff is devastated, but it also fuels his desire for revenge. He's ready to take down Macbeth.
Yeah, he's got a personal stake in this fight now.
Definitely. So Act 4 ends with Macbeth feeling this false sense of security based on those misleading prophecies. And meanwhile, the forces against him are growing stronger.
It's like the calm before the storm.
Exactly. The tension is building, and we're heading towards the final confrontation in Act 5.
Okay, I'm ready for the endgame.
Act 5 is intense. So scene 1 opens with Lady Macbeth back in Dunsinane Castle, and she's completely lost it.
Oh, this is the sleepwalking scene, right?
Yeah, she's sleepwalking, and she's constantly trying to wash her hands. She keeps talking about the blood and saying things like, out, damn spot, out, I say.
So her guilt is manifesting in this physical way.
It is. It's like she can't escape the horror of what she's done. Even a doctor who's observing her is like, this is beyond my expertise.
So she's beyond help at this point.
It seems that way. Then we shift to the rebel forces. They're getting ready to attack Dunsinane.
Okay, so the final battle is about to begin.
It is, and they come up with this plan to use branches from Birnam Wood as camouflage.
Oh, interesting. So they're unknowingly fulfilling part of that prophecy.
Exactly. And back at the castle, Macbeth is still clinging to those prophecies. He's like, no one born of woman can harm me, and Birnam Wood can't move, so I'm good.
Oh, he's in for a surprise.
A big one. But he is starting to get nervous because he keeps getting reports about the approaching army.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore an entire army marching toward you.
It is. But Macbeth is still defiant. He's like, even if I'm doomed, I'm going down fighting.
It's going out with a bang.
For sure. Then we get to scene 5, and it starts with a cry from within the castle.
Oh no, what happened?
Lady Macbeth is dead.
Wow, so it's really the end of an era.
It is, and Macbeth's reaction is just heartbreaking. He's like, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Wow, that's a heavy line.
It is. He's basically saying that life is meaningless and pointless.
So he's completely given up hope.
He has. And then a messenger arrives with the news that Birnam Wood is moving.
Wait, what? How is that even possible?
That's what Macbeth thinks, too. He realizes that the prophecy has come true, but not in the way he expected.
Oh, those tricky witches.
I know. So now Macbeth is really starting to panic.
Yeah, his whole world is falling apart.
It is. And then the battle begins.
Okay, so this is it, the final showdown?
Yep. In scene 7, Macbeth is still fighting like a madman. He even kills young Seward, which makes him think that the none of woman-born prophecy is still valid.
Oh, he's still holding on to that little shred of hope.
He is, but then Macduff shows up and he's ready to fight.
This is the moment we've all been waiting for.
It is. And as they're fighting, Macduff reveals a crucial detail about his birth. He says Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped.
Wait, so he was a C-section?
Exactly. Which means he wasn't technically born of woman in the traditional sense.
All those witches are sneaky.
I know, and Macbeth is just horrified. He realizes that he's been tricked this whole time.
That's got to be a crushing realization.
It is. He hesitates for a moment, but then he's like, well, screw it, I'm going down swinging, and they fight, and Macduff kills Macbeth and cuts off his head.
Wow, what a dramatic ending.
It is. And then in scene 8, we see the aftermath. Malcolm is declared the new king, and they're all talking about restoring order and peace to Scotland.
So good triumphs over evil.
In the end, yes. And Axay and Dr. Rathod make some really interesting observations about the ending. Lady Macbeth's death is this tragic reminder of how guilt can consume a person.
Yeah, she never really recovered from what she did.
And Macbeth's death is this direct result of his misinterpretation of those prophecies.
It's like he was blinded by his own ambition.
Exactly. So to sum up this whole discussion about Macbeth, we see how ambition can start as this small spark and then turn into this raging fire that consumes everything in its path.
And how guilt can be just as destructive as any weapon.
Definitely. And we're left with that question of fate versus free will, Was Macbeth always destined to become a tyrant, or did he make choices that led him down that path?
And the supernatural elements add this whole other layer of complexity. They're just there to be spooky, or are they reflections of Macbeth's inner turmoil?
Right. It's something to think about. And ultimately, Macbeth is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrupting nature of power.
It's a story that's still relevant today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for Macbeth and all its complexities.
And maybe even spark some thoughts about the role of ambition and guilt in your own lives.
That's a great point. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, happy reading.
Or listening in this case.
Very true.